Hello and welcome to the Crafty Pint podcast. I'm Will.
I'm James. Good to see you, Will. How's things?
I'm good. Great to see you, James. Whereabouts are you coming to us from?
It's a bit of a sad day today. This is our last day in the Gibb River region. We'll be heading south and back onto bitumen in a few hours' time. On the other hand, it's the last night of 15 straight in a tent as a family, which I think will bring some relief to the kids. But we'll actually be in a bed in a motel tonight, so that's quite exciting before we pick up the caravan again tomorrow. But no, behind us is Windjana Gorge. So what you can see over my head, if you're watching on YouTube, is a 300 million year old limestone reef. So I'm technically sat on the bottom of an old ocean bed. And if you go just sort of into the middle of the gorge, there's this just one of the most stunning landscapes you'll see. You can't swim in there because there's a lot of crocs in there. They're all freshies, but there's so many freshies they won't let you go in. But yeah, and talking of freshies, even though I've been in this part of the world, I mentioned last week how I bumped into that couple who'd toured, flown from WA to Sydney to visit all the mountain culture venues. When I was at the start of the Gibb River Road, I was just setting up some stuff at the campsite, and I heard someone yell out, "Who's running Crafty Pines this week?" And it was Rob Freshwater, or Freshie, who used to be one of the senior. He was a brewer at Malt Shovel for years and years and years, sort of from the Chuck Hahn era. I used to brew beers often bump into him at the James Squire Hotel when it was the James Squire Hotel, when they cared about decent beer in Melbourne. So I bumped into him, and then a couple of days ago, was it yesterday? Who knows? A couple of days ago, I think, we were doing our first walk through the Windjana Gorge, and I spotted a guy speaking in a German accent with a Weihenstephan top on. I was like, oh, maybe he's a brewer at Weihenstephan. Let's have a bit of a beer chat. But it turns out, no, he's actually a member of the Merry Mashers and Melbourne Brewers homebrew clubs, and was up here with his wife. So we had a lovely chat about the Merry Mashers and all that kind of stuff. Posted a photo of him yesterday onto our socials. So it just shows... I'm in a pretty remote part of the world here. This isn't even on the main sort of Gibb River Road, and yet you're still bumping into people you have a sort of connection with from the beer industry. So that was a bit of fun.
No, you can't go anywhere. I'm sure you'll have the same experience in Spain or something like that as well.
Quite possibly. I think you've done the same thing. In fact, one of the guests that we're going to, one of the stories we're going to talk about later, you bumped into in London a while ago as well. But before we get to that, there was some big news came in last week. I think it was on the day we'd already published the podcast, wasn't it? I lose track now of how we get all these things sort of landing as we're either wrapping up our podcast, about to record the intro, or just after it's gone live.
You no longer measure time with days, just in terms of podcast recordings and tent setups.
So we used to have sort of like that one deadline we'd always hope people would avoid, which was getting the newsletter out on a Friday, and then people would always drop the big like brewery sale news on a Friday morning. Now we have these extra deadlines through the week, so it just gets even more convoluted.
Yes, well, huge news in the industry with Kylie Lethbridge to leave the IBA in October. So, yeah, she's taken up a job as the general manager at the Australian Distillers Association. So, not going too far, obviously. But, I mean, yeah, this was a big shock to me, and I'm sure to many people in the industry. I mean, Kylie, as she joined in 2020. She's Victorian based, obviously, so she was there for the height of continued lockdowns and closures and all those kind of things. And
Not just 2020 either. Not just 2020 either, but just as the national lockdown was about to kick in, it was like, you know, she may have missed the bushfire summer that we had to deal with in Victoria and parts of New South Wales, but she landed right at the start of, you know, probably the worst and toughest 5 years for craft beer, I think.
Yeah, well, she describes them as craft beer's challenging years, which I think is cautiously optimistic, which I like. But yeah, obviously, Kylie's been here for a lot of the challenges, and she'll be surely missed. I'm sure I called her pretty quickly after seeing it to catch up, and yeah, she obviously her phone was running pretty hot on Thursday when the news came out.
Yeah. I think, despite the fact it's been a tough year, and and for everyone in the beer industry, really, they've still pulled off. There was the online streamed Indies Awards. There's a couple of Indies Awards in person. There was that excellent looking BrewCon on the Gold Coast, and then I think the advocacy that's been done by the association under Kylie's leadership. I think that's probably the key thing she brought, knowing how to have those conversations with other partners and other stakeholders and government bodies and whatever has made that's probably been her biggest legacy for the industry. I think the fact she's moving into spirits, I mean, they'll definitely benefit from her her experience. And I think, I mean, she'll still be sort of around. You get the feeling that there are sort of moves to more closely align the indie or the Australian sort of distilling industry and sort of indie beer in Australia. Certainly with with Grainstock coming up, that's all about brewing, distilling, and baking. So I'm sure we'll still be seeing and hearing from Kylie. I'm sure we will, given our future plans. But I guess, so wishing Kylie all the best and thanks to everything she's done for the industry over the last 5 years. If I don't see her before, we'll all see her at Grainstock for a farewell tipple or two.
It's effectively her last week, yeah. So if you didn't already have enough reasons to go to Grainstock in October, there's another one.
Yeah, and on the topic of spirits, Will, you've been chatting to someone about a story. I guess it's a little bit tangential to what we normally do here, but very much in the world of spirits and with connections to beer.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure we've ever done a story on mezcal before, but it kind of seemed like a good opportunity because this new mezcal Australian mezcal brand has launched, and 3 out of 4 of the founders were at Stone and Wood for a significant amount of time. So Pat Coulson, Tom Rule, and Dane Pittman, they all spent close to a decade each at Stone and
Yeah.
Wood, and then Jack Connor is the fourth founder who runs a bar that I've never been to on the Gold Coast, but looks incredible, Rosella's, which is particularly known for its use of native ingredients in cocktails and that kind of thing. But I saw these people were behind it, and I thought it might be a good time to talk about it. I don't know much about mezcal. It's obviously tequila's huge in the world, and also Australia actually drinks a lot of it. It's got a geographical indicator, so tequila has to be from a certain part of the world, Mexico. And so they're making something with agave that's Australian and some that's imported, although they hope it soon enough, once Australian agave industry kicks off, we'll use more Australian agave, if not 100%. But yeah, I just thought, this is maybe a fledgling Australian industry. You've got these 3 industry veterans from beer. So I thought it would be a good chance to sort of talk to them about their challenges and how they're doing it and their approach and that kind of thing. And through that, hopefully pick out a few similarities to beer or talk about, maybe what's next on the horizon. And yeah, I'm always fascinated by other drinks as well. So I thought it was a tenuous enough drink to allow me to talk about something that interests me that's not craft beer, which hopefully readers aren't too critical of that, because we are called the Crafty Pint, and you probably shouldn't drink a pint of mezcal, I guess.
No, not in a hurry anyway. But I remember when went to visit Junetown just after they opened, Sailor's Graves Place. They've got a wide selection of mezcals there. They believe it's a wonderful drink to pair with what they're offering down there. I'm sure there's many other brewers and breweries out
Well,
there.
Bodrigi too. They have a terrific mezcal back bar.
Yeah, so there we go. There's enough justifications. Will, the article is commissioned and approved. I guess mezcal, I'm sure, has a fascinating history. Talking of history, another story you've been doing, which had a really great reaction on socials when you published it on Monday this week, about the Goulburn Brewery, which I hadn't, I wasn't aware of the backstory until I read your lovely interview with Neil Cameron.
Yeah, no, I missed it. It's great that Neil Cameron, obviously he's from England, has done all this work behind what looks like one of the most English breweries in Australia. So, its history goes back to 1836. It eventually became part of Tooth & Co. The site is still very much intact, so, has a good claim. They say Australia's oldest mainland brewery, which in terms of making beer now and history, is definitely the case. There was a long time where Tooth & Co. just sort of used it as a logistics hub kind of thing. But yeah, it was fascinating. I had no idea that recently, from the 80s, a Catholic priest took it over and was making beer from a few accounts, or at least most accounts, maybe. The beer wasn't very good, but we do know that it will be very good.
Do you see Doug Donnellan's comment on the Facebook post? So ex sort of Lion and NZ Hops and various other things. Guy just saying he used to love going in there and drinking the priest's flat homebrew.
Yeah. I think he was sort of using potentially sort of Cooper's extract or brewing in that sort of way, which is very different from what Neil's doing there. But, he's revived some of or been inspired by some of the original recipes. Neil's obviously got a very esteemed background in beer. He was at the Australian Brewery when they launched with craft beer cans, and he's a lot of people will jump in the comments because they know Neil, of course, because he's been a teacher, and
Yeah.
that they've learnt to brew thanks to him at New South Wales TAFE. So yeah, and he when we were talking back and forth over email, he was actually overseas, and he was like, "You really, if you can come up to this place to do the story, I would really enjoy it." Goulburn's a bit of a drive from Melbourne, so I was like, "Look, we'll do it over the phone now." But then once all the photos came in, just as I was putting the story together, I was like, "Oh, I really wish I had have sort of found a way to make it there because it's a beautiful old site,
Yeah.
rich history, right on this riverbank. It looks like an incredible thing. It sounds like people have been waiting for it for a while. It's
Yeah.
sold in 2021, so it's been a very long restoration as well. So I personally can't wait to go and check it out.
Sounds great. And another sort of slice of beer history to an extent, maybe more recent history. You've got an event that you've lined up with Evan Hunter, the head brewer at Bendigo Brewing, on the eve of this year's Bendigo on the Hop, featuring a couple of our recent podcast guests, Willie Simpson and Catherine Stark from the recently closed Seven Sheds.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like Evan was listening to the Crafty Pint podcast and brewing this beer for Bendigo on the Hop, and he kind of realized, he was like, the beer I'm making for this festival is actually completely inspired by Seven Sheds Kentish Ale.
Mhm.
So he kind of went, well, Willie and Catherine said they might come up. How about we do this event? And yeah, he's got the last bottles of the Kentish Ale, so you'll be able to try them. Evan's beer and the original next to each other, and we'll talk all things beer history, and of course Willie's esteemed career covering beer well before
Yeah.
you or I did.
Yeah, Willie's a great raconteur. Evan's a great guy as well. Plenty of unique ideas about brewing. I'm sure it'll be a fascinating evening with some delicious beers. And I guess sticking on this sort of historic theme for this week, our main guests this week are Brad and Nicole Flowers. Many people, especially around the Sydney, New South Wales beer scene, will know Brad Flowers. I think if you sort of look at sort of the 2010s in particular, when craft beer was really starting to take off in Sydney and surrounds, Brad was one of the key players through his distribution business. He'd signed up a whole bunch of smaller or sort of fledgling craft brewers around the country. So he was supplying to a lot of bars and venues, putting a lot of events on. I think equally he is a larger than life character who brought the party wherever he went, or if there was a good party going, took it to another level. So he had that sort of history in the industry, but they now run the Overland Corner Hotel, which is, I think it's the oldest licensed in or hotel in the Riverland region in South Australia. I'm sure if people had said, where do you think Brad Flowers will be 10 years on from the height of this, the sort of the craft beer era in Sydney in the 2010s, I don't think anyone would have said running an historic pub in the middle of nowhere in the Riverland that's sort of part museum and part pub. But that's where they ended up. I won't sort of spoil the story, but it's one we've written about in the past. But it was probably my favourite story of the whole COVID era, how him and Nicole and his family actually ended up in that region, let alone buying the pub. And they've done a fantastic restoration. It's gets sort of regular traffic from sort of travellers and grey nomads going through because they've got free camping on the Murray next door. But I think over time, not only have they turned into a great pub pouring independent craft beer, they've also recreated one of the old recipes from there. They found a recipe from a porter from the early days that you can try, a really lovely classic porter. But they've also started hosting some massive events. And the next sort of big one coming up, which is why we're running the show this week. In a couple of weeks' time, they've got their wine, beer, spirits, and small goods festival on September the 30th. But they've been doing like raves for 2,500 people in the quarry out the back where the rock was hewn to build the pub 150 or 170 years ago. So yeah, really, really fascinating how they ended up there, and some real good insight into how you can actually bring independent craft beer to that sort of community and win people over. So yeah, that's up after the break.
And also, we've recently added a new listing to the site, which is Devil Bend Farm Beer Co. down on the Mornington Peninsula. While I was down there, I caught up with their head brewer, Michael Stanzel, who many will know from his time at Burnley Brewing as well. And he learned to brew in Germany and all those things. The reason I say that is because one person in the Crafty Pint survey requested Devil Bend as a guest, and I got in the car and I went straight down there to organise that. So if you
I,
want,
th- I think it was within 15, 20 seconds of it landing in the inbox. The podcast survey.
I just
You were like,
tried.
James, you're going to have to carry the can for the rest of the day. I'm off to Devil Bend.
Yeah, I closed the laptop, got in the car, got the cameras, and went on the road straight down
That's the way
Peninsula Link.
we operate it, Crafty.
Yeah, so obviously the reason I say that is because the Crafty Pint survey is still open. I think we've forgotten to mention it over the last few intros, but would still love your results. We're kind of getting close to a number where we'll be happy with the sort of stats on it and that kind of thing. So if you're thinking about filling it out, please do. It does really help us think about the show and plan for it. And you can request a guest, and I'll go anywhere. Just actually, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I'm going to end up, I don't know, booking a flight to somewhere I really don't want to go to talk to one person. But within reason,
within
reason, we will go anywhere. Yeah. So yeah, please fill out that survey, and also if you want to show some love to the awesome people in the industry, make sure you take part in our Have You Done a Rallings campaign. This is your chance to shout out the good beer citizens. They could do anything in the beer industry.
Well, I think if you look at the response that we got from the recent social posts celebrating Damo Martin at Dangerous Ales, our most recent Have You Done a Rallings Good Beer Citizen winner, and Joss from Hop On Brewery Tours, I think people really appreciate the nominations and the shout out, as well as the prize from Rallings labels and stickers. And of course, there's also the Bluestone Yeast Brewery of the Month campaign running, celebrating your favourite breweries. We've had a whole flurry of nominations for that, but we'd love to get some more in before we pick the next winners. So you can do that at craftypint.com/bluestone.
Okay, so enjoy the chat, and if you do, make sure you leave us a like, subscribe, or review us. It really helps other people find the show, so it's really important. You can do it on any podcast platform you listen to. So enjoy the chat. Cheers.
Cheers.
Brewers, be sure to attend Grainstock, an all-new industry conference and beer festival celebrating grain, brewing, distilling, and baking. It's all happening from the 9th to the 11th of October at the stunning Witten Malthouse in the Riverina. Now, in the lead up to the event, we're getting regular updates from conference organiser Stu Whitecross from Voyager Malt, who joins us right now with all the latest. Stu, how are you?
Good, Craig. How are you?
Good, mate. Thank you for joining us again.
Mate, thanks for having us.
Mate, now there's a lot of talk about this event. It's looking fantastic. One of the questions I think I'd love to cover today that brewers might be asking is, how do I get there? Witten is, it's pretty much smack bang in the middle of New South Wales. Tell me what you've got organised.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Look, we've worked really hard to try and make this as easy and affordable as possible for brewers, distillers, and bakers to attend. Not only just attend it, but to really enjoy themselves. We understand that it is a bit of a distance from some of the capital cities. But thanks to the incredible generosity of some of our sponsors, Joe White Maltings, Barrett Burston, and AMSAT Malt, we've been able to secure free return buses from capital cities, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Canberra, and we're also encouraging any brewers in southeast Queensland to fly into Canberra to be able to grab a seat on these buses, a return seat. And these bus trips will form part of the tours. So it'll be a very productive trip out to the Riverina here, and it'll be stopping off at malt houses, grain processing sites, grain receival sites, trial and breeding plots, growers, farms. It'll be a very, very productive trip out here.
Nice.
Now, to get a seat on these buses, what we're asking is for brewers to simply donate a keg. That keg will be served at the consumer-facing festival held in Griffith, which will be branded up with the brewery's logo and all those kind of things, allowing the brewers to attend to actually enjoy the festival rather than being stuck behind a bar pouring beers all day. They will also get a 3-day pass to Grainstock. So that's Fields, the paddock tours, Ferment, our symposium and trade show here, and the final day festival.
Oh, wow. So that's basically a completely free deal for brewers. Just donate a keg.
It is, and I'm kind of really wanting to jump on one of these buses myself. I think it's going to be a pretty good road trip out from some of these places out here to the Riverina at a fantastic time of the year, October, right at the start of grain harvest. So there'll be plenty of action to see in the paddock as well when brewers get here.
Mate, well, there you go. That is a fantastic deal for any brewer who wants to get involved and jump on what I'm sure will be a pretty epic road trip to Grainstock. Guys, check it all out at grainstock.com.au. You can hit the Fields and Ferment tab for all the details on the industry conference. And we'll be back with Stu for more Grainstock updates soon. Thank you so much, Stu.
Thanks, mate.
Hey beer lovers, limited tickets are still available for the Point Break Brewery Invitational Beer Festival on Saturday the 16th of August, brought to you by the legends at Blackman's Brewery in Torquay. As my good friend Milo Longbottom reports, it's the Surf Coast's social event of the season. An epic day of really good beer, great people, and amazing vibes. There's a rockstar lineup of breweries hitting the red carpet, including Rocky Ridge, Garage Project, Kaiju, Banks, Schlenkerla from Germany, Bright Brewery, Hop Nation, Bridge Road Brewers, and Goodland. Not to mention live music, delicious food, and non-stop good times. Last year's event was a sellout success, and you'll be kicking yourself if you miss this one. Get your tickets now at blackmansbrewery.com.au.
Nicole and Brad, welcome to the show, and thank you for having me to your little corner of South Australia.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, especially, I know you're not working today, so I've dragged you down to the pub on a day off, so do appreciate it.
It's not really it's not too hard dragging us down to the pub.
No.
Day off.
I have timed it really badly, though, that we're not here when the pub's open, but I do have a pint of, also a schooner of what do we have here?
That's that's actually a pint in South Australia. That's the Overland Corner Original Porter. From a 165-year-old recipe that Jack from Woolshed Brewery was good enough to reproduce and replicate.
Nice. And how did you, where'd you find the recipe? Was it just like tucked away in one of the...
Just through a lot of research.
Yeah.
The boys that originally built the hotel, the Brand brothers, they worked on the hop fields in Knights Head in Kent.
Yeah.
So a lot of research through that. We found the original recipe. We were able to acquire the hops and the malt. And then Jack was actually able to contact the World Yeast Library and acquire the original yeast strain, and now we've got it on tap. It's brilliant. And they actually flew over an original hand pump too for it. So
lovely texture too. Well, I think as this chat goes on, we'll discover that you don't do things by halves. But before we go into detail about this amazing pub with stat, I think most people don't like looking back to the COVID era. But I think there was, of all the beer stories that came out, as I said to you before, I think the story of how you guys came to be here was my absolute favourite in everything that happened in beer. So do you want to sort of take us back to, I guess, early 2020 and what your plans were and how you somehow ended up in this place?
Here? Yeah, I suppose we look upon COVID very fondly. It was a really good time, and it's hard to say that to a lot of people that were stuck in Sydney and Melbourne and the capital cities. But Nicole and myself and our two children living in Sydney, decided that we'd sort of sell up, buy a caravan, buy a car, and go for an extended 5-year trip around Australia, visiting all the craft breweries.
As I said, don't do things by halves. 5 years.
Yeah,
5 year road trip.
We sort of gave ourselves 5 years. So it was, go and visit all the craft breweries that I distribute and looked after. Now, we'd never caravan before in our life.
Yep.
I'd never even towed a box trailer. So, and Nicole was in charge of purchasing the caravan, and she purchased probably the largest caravan ever built in production.
Was that just to test him and just test his skills?
I just thought bigger was better, but now I realise it wasn't.
No, so this thing was absolutely huge. The street where my parents were living at the time, it took us about an hour to get out of the street just because I was driving at about 4 kilometres an hour.
Yeah. They're pretty terrifying the first time you pull off.
It is. And this thing was, I think it was 30, how many feet?
23?
23 feet. And then it was just monolithic. So anyway, we decided to go up to a friend's brewery and winery in the Hunter Valley, go off grid, learn how the caravan works for a week. During that week where we had no television reception, phone reception or anything, that's when COVID struck. So we went to, I like to say, we went to Coles. The only thing left was batteries and tampons, and people were fighting for toilet paper.
And were you thinking World War III had broken out? So
we just thought Armageddon. It was like the kids were like, oh wow, it's they're thinking it's an apocalypse. So anyway, read the newspapers, listened to the radio, thought, what's going on? We then got a call from my best mate, Tom, who owns Woolshed Brewery. He said, listen, they knew we were just taking off on this fabulous adventure. He'd got word that the borders were all shutting in about 20 hours. He sort of said, listen, turn the caravan around and drive straight here now. Now, we'd gone from, as I said, driving a caravan along a street, which took us about an hour.
To cutting cross country.
And we're thinking, well, I've got 20 hours. So we drove across the Hay Plains at like 4 o'clock in the morning doing about 20 kilometres an hour. It was.
Did you share the driving? Did you get behind the wheel as
I
well?
did.
You
nice.
did. Yeah.
Who picks it up quickest?
Oh, I think we were both just so terrified, especially on the Hay Plains where you got B-doubles going past and kangaroos, but we knew we had a certain time frame. We had to make it to the border here.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got to the border. Sure enough, police, army, all closed.
Yeah.
So that sort of put a little bit of fear into us. It's amazing what you can get away with when you work in the beer industry. Yeah. So after a little 10-minute conversation with the police officers, explaining where we were going, explaining what we were
so you
doing.
missed your 20-hour
window. Shut, all shut.
You didn't make it,
They sort of knew Tom, knew Woolshed Brewery, knew beer, loved beer, so they let us sneak across the border. So we then were lucky enough to go and spend 9 months at Woolshed Brewery, which is arguably probably the most picturesque brewery in Australia.
Yeah. It's not just on the river, but the fact that it's on that bend and at the top of the cliffs.
It's just a 100-plus-year-old shearing shed. The whole place, you couldn't pick a more picturesque spot. So we were lucky enough to get out of the caravan, which we'd only been in for a week, and get onto one of Tom's luxury houseboats. Yeah. And we spent 9 months at the brewery. So probably the greatest COVID sort of experience we could have.
Now, and on the houseboats, they have taps as well. So
they do have beer
choose
taps.
Which kegs you want.
They do. But the best thing is when you're at a brewery for 9 months that's shut to the public, you also can just walk about 20 steps up into the bar.
And just help yourself.
And it was all closed. So we had like a little, we like to call it our own little Waco. We sort of just all bunkered down and the kids were riding horses and motorbikes and swimming and we had an absolute ball. But what you tend to do at a brewery when you're sort of it's shut to the public is you drink a lot. And we tended to drink earlier and earlier each day. And during one of those big sessions, the crazy, ludicrous idea of purchasing the oldest building in the Riverland and the third oldest standing structure in the state, which is the Overland Corner Hotel, came to fruition. And we sort of...
Whose idea was it first?
Well...
Tom,
to be honest, he knew of the building, he knew of the history, and he'd spent about the last 12 months trying to sew it into my brain. And it's only now I look back and I go, I know exactly what he was trying to do. He was like, every trip we'd come up from Sydney and we'd spend 2 weeks on the houseboats prior, he'd say, let's go have a beer out at the pub. And it was always shut. So we'd spend about 12 months.
It was operating as a pub, wasn't it? But just hit and miss whenever it was open,
Not all the time, were they? Coming down on weekends, opening it then. And they just, I think they were over it and they'd let it get a little bit.
Let it drop by the wayside. So it was in, I suppose, desperate need of a little love and attention. So anyway, we became the proud, as we like to say, the proud custodians of the Overland Corner Hotel. It was... I think if we had to try to do that now with the kids at their age, it wouldn't have worked. But being that the kids were, 5 and 10, but they were in COVID, but they had the best COVID ever.
From a caravan
to a houseboat to a hotel, a pub. And here we are now, the proud custodians and owners of the Overland Corner Hotel.
And that was. Best part of 5 years ago?
5 years, our fifth year. So it was
it
was pretty amazing. But I always look back and think Tom knew exactly what he was doing.
Well, I know when we came through here last time was about a year after you'd opened, and we were almost doing a similar thing. We were on our way back to Victoria, from the NT, and then realised that Melbourne was going back into lockdown. Took the decision to stay in Renmark.
So
we stayed in Renmark for 5 weeks, and then came out here. And the place we stayed for part of our trip in Renmark had the cops there, who were monitoring the border at the time on the bikes.
Yeah, on the bikes.
And I can tell you that at least one of the pairs of them who had one of their cabins, they liked to drink beer every night. I don't think they stopped till 2 or 3 in the morning. So you probably got those guys when you were coming this way.
Well, it's funny, when we were living at the brewery, because as the crow flies, the brewery is so close to the Victorian border. And we're dealing with the police on a daily basis, but they were coming down to Sagado and they were finding, abandoned cars where people were trying to escape across and swim across the river.
Like Mexico.
It was. It was like and it was quite amazing.
Yeah.
But it really sort of cemented our fact of it was time to leave the city.
Yeah.
Right.
We loved the whole sort of country vibe. We thought we wanted a change for the kids.
Yeah.
So that sort of, it just sort of fell into place.
Yeah. And I guess, I know you said the place wasn't open that often.
Yep.
Was it the sort of the building in a bit of disarray in the gardens as well? Or
It definitely
because it's like my kids just walked up, over there, and my son's like, I remember this place. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it is like the gardens are so beautiful. It's like the best English country pub garden.
True.
The whole history of the whole place. So what did you actually have to do to get it like as it is now?
Yeah, a lot of blood, sweat and tears. I suppose the good part is that the bones were here.
Yeah.
So the building itself didn't really have to do anything to, just sort of, a bit of lipstick on her.
Yeah.
The grounds needed a bit of love and attention.
Yeah.
But like what you said, a lot of people go, why was the pub built here? It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
But this was the very first building in the entire Riverland.
Yeah,
so, Mildura wasn't even thought of. This pub was a staging point if you were transporting cattle or sheep from South Australia and New South Wales. But being that it was the first building, this pub was also the police station, the post office, the general store, and the morgue for the entire Riverland.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it because you mentioned there was stories about this being a haunted building when you first moved in, and you had some interesting experiences. Is that right? You heard a few noises when you were doing some renos.
We did.
So you think you've got a bit of a handle on why that might be now?
Yeah. So doing the research, obviously finding out a lot of history about the hotel, finding out that the morgue for the whole entire Riverland was in there, so they'd store
like just
up,
sort of over your shoulder from where we're sitting. Yeah,
definitely, and which was also pretty much one room next to our bedroom when we first moved in. But
how did you and the kids feel about this? Once you found out there was a morgue.
I slept in the caravan for the first month.
Yeah. So I slept in.
Leaving the kids and Brad as the canaries down the coal mine, just like, listen, if you survive.
It was funny. We'd read all the reports and we'd seen all the television shows. The more we delved into it, and they used to store 200 bodies in the morgue before they shipped them down on the paddle steamers to Adelaide.
Yeah.
They'd actually put them into our laundry, start a fire, and they'd smoke and preserve the bodies.
Yeah.
So I do remember when we pulled up in the caravan and I explained to Nicole what we'd done. The children learned a few new words that morning, but Nicole and the kids stayed in the caravan. And after it, I'd sort of come in here.
Come in every morning, he's still alive.
Yeah, we'd work all day on the place, but as soon as it started to get about 5 o'clock, I tell you, it was like Usain Bolt, Nicole and the kids straight back to the caravan. I decided after about the third night, this is ridiculous. I've got to sleep in here one night. So I slept.
So were there noises? Were there things going? The traditional things going bump in the night?
I think there was no furniture in here, was there?
There was nothing. So it was a big
empty
dungeon.
Hollow.
Yeah. And I sort of things. I mean, I slept in here, as I said, on about the third night. Yeah. I had that many craft beers under my belt that I reckon I scared the ghosts with the snoring. But yeah, now that we've sort of spent, we then lived inside for close to a year.
Yeah.
So a lot of things like stereo turning on, moving toys around, doors closing, you go in and you find something that you've just been talking about, like a little wooden box with a compass on it. That was probably our biggest... giggling kids.
So genuinely, the stuff that you see in the 1980s classic horror movie era, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And photos, still to this day, there was a lovely old lady that came and took a photo down the hallway into the dining room. And you could see people in the dining room eating, but in front of them was the pure silhouette of someone in like the 1700s clothing.
Got the photo.
Clear as day.
Yeah.
So you can see the outline of someone, but you can see through them as a husband and wife,
And do you reckon whoever it is, the spirits that live here, have they accepted you?
Correct,
they're happy to have you here?
They're
It's
very
friendly.
much.
It's not scary now.
No, it's Hannah. So the two children that passed away in the hotel, which is the picture on the wall, and then their mother. The kids are the ones. They run up and down the hallways. They open doors, giggle, slam the doors shut. I got to the point where I was yelling at them like a father would. And you're like, shut up. And they giggle and shut the door again. And so, we've come to live with it.
Yeah.
It's a bit of fun now.
And next week on Paranormal Weekly.
Yes, Well, in saying that, my daughter did say, because she was getting to the age, she'd have to go and shower in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
So we were still a pub, so we'd have to wait till the hotel was closed. Yeah. And she said, listen, I understand, but I've pretty much had enough of sleeping in a haunted hotel.
Okay.
And we thought, fair enough.
Yeah.
So we were lucky enough, we purchased the house at the top of the hill, about 100 metres away from the pub.
Yeah.
We went and moved in there, and we said to her, there you go, we're out of the ghost hotel. Anyway, her bedroom, where her bedroom window is, there's a beautiful peppercorn tree out the front of her bedroom window. I decided to trim it all back, and it's all the grave sites of all the ghosts.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so they followed her up the hill. So she's like, are you
She's
kidding
got
me?
the little local cemetery as well. Nice.
Pretty much
Yeah,
at her front bedroom window.
It's like your own little Beetlejuice of the Riverland, isn't it, really?
Yeah, but no, they've come to sort of accept it all. So, listen, the building itself just means so much to the people of the Riverland.
Yeah.
And that's why we
and
knew
you've created a bit of a sort of museum side of it as well. If you sort of, we're sat in the front bar for those watching. Over your back, you go through. You can sort of drink in there as well. But all the artifacts you found, everything,
correct.
Like you've made it into like a little museum piece as well.
And that was the police station. Yeah. So the original police station, the first 2 police officers ever that died on duty in South Australia died at Overland Corner. They drowned at the river. Yeah. So they were sleeping in a tent.
Such a happy place.
Yeah.
So much death.
So much death. So they then created the actual police station inside the hotel. Yeah. So I like to say we're the only pub in the world that is a pub, a police station, and a morgue in the same room. I could be wrong, but I don't know of any others. It's sort of, it means a lot to the people of the Riverland because it was the first building, and no one. I mean, as the towns grew, you have to have somewhere to have a birthday, christening, a wedding, a funeral. So they all had it at the pub.
There is so much history here.
When we did it up as when it was a full-time pub again, the floodgates opened and the people sort of came voting with their feet. And it was amazing.
You wonder how many amazing buildings like this have just been knocked down over the years, or are left still standing, waiting for someone like you guys to come along and put new life into them, because it is phenomenal. It has. You said, in terms of the building, sort of cleaning stuff up, moving stuff around, putting this up, but also doing what we've done outside. But then I guess the other side of it is the free camping on the river and stuff like that, and how that's only sort of part of what's coming through. I mean, locals are coming through as well. Is that right in terms of your audience?
It's definitely 50-50, isn't it?
Yeah, 50% locals and tourists, travellers.
Staying out the back midweek, and then we get a lot of the locals back on the weekends.
Yeah. Well, I like to say, I mean, I've visited a fair few pubs in my time, 1 or 2, but there's nothing like this. I mean, I've been to pubs in all over Australia, and this is, it's like a little English tavern that was built 170 years ago. There's no televisions, there's no tab, there's no pokies. You got to talk to people around here, as we like to say. But it's like you're stepping back in time. And as such, it's pretty amazing. People love that authenticity, and they come and sort of, we'll spend the day and have lunch and dinner and camp out the back, and we've got music. And
they end up staying longer than they planned. They're just dropping in on
we
their
call
way
in for a day and stayed 3.
Yeah, that's what we do. We get that quite often. Only an older gentleman the other day said, because we offer free camping out in the car park and down on the river, and he came into me after about a week and he sort of said, free camping my ass. He goes, I've spent my whole holiday money because I've been here for 7 days. He goes, and he turned around and they drove back to Melbourne.
Yeah. And in terms of what you've done, in terms of, aside from the physicality, like what have you done in terms of the offering to bring people in? I mean, obviously you've been around, I know you from craft beer, you've been distributing craft beer for well over a decade around Australia. There was no sort of compromise on that front. All the taps are craft beer. I think that when we first came through, you did have some like Great Northern cans, and there's still a significant proportion of sales. Is that still the same?
Yeah, so
we've
only got one non-craft, or as we say, non-independent product in the pub.
Yeah.
So it was a big, Nicole and a few others thought it was a bit crazy, going 100%, the amount of craft beer that I'd purchased, but we weren't going to sort of, give up on that. Also, the food offering. We are known as the Fruit Belt here in South Australia. Amazing local produce. So we wrote the food menu out, and then we spent about 6 months swapping everything for locally sourced products.
Yeah, great.
So it was all about the food, all about the beer, wine, and the spirits.
And the wine, isn't it?
Yeah. So the wines are 100% local. Yeah. The beers are 100% local and or independently owned. And now the spirits. We've got what we call a shit shelf, which has got non-independent, and as we find an independent product, we sort of swap it and throw the empty bottle in the bin and go never again. So that was something that a lot of people weren't sure would work.
Because that's the fear, isn't it? That people come in and go, place looks lovely, but I don't recognise anything in here at all. Especially if you've got, I guess, a large proportion of older customers coming in who
it still happens.
Can be a bit set in their ways.
Yeah, and it does still happen. We like to explain it. I suppose that where it comes in handy, being in the industry, that I can say. I ask them firstly what they drink. Yeah. They tell me. I then make a sly joke about I can go get them some river water. But you get these older gentlemen that are sort of set in their ways. I explain to them that every craft brewery does a lager, an easy drinking beer. So I often then give them a few tastes, and sure enough, 99% of the time they're converted. And I think being what this building is, it allows us to push the boundaries a little bit more.
If you were maybe a standard in-town corner pub or whatever, where you've still got the TAB in the next room, it'd be a lot harder to maybe do that.
Right.
So we can say to them, this is an authentic, this is Australian-owned, this is the original pub, this is what we serve. We really want to promote that. And it's worked really well. And then offering, I suppose, sort of pushing the offerings to events. A lot of events. We're doing functions and events and that. Yeah,
you sent me a list of some of those events the other day. Like it's like I saw you've got another sort of wine, food, beer festival coming up.
Correct. Which
feels like the sort of thing you do here.
Yes.
It's kind of quite normal thing to do. But you've also held drag bingo for 500 people.
Yeah,
Where did you fit 500 people for drag bingo?
All outside. It's funny where we do drag queen bingo. I suppose Nicole and I are coming from Sydney, and there's no stop to the events you can do in Sydney. The events that we've attended. We thought, why couldn't we bring this to the country? We sort of thought to ourselves, there's a few events we sort of went, I'm not sure if it'll work, but they all have. Drag queen bingo especially is just...
And a rave for 2,000 people. Was that put on for yourselves, or was that put on?
Now I'll point the finger at Nicole for that one. She loves her electronic dance music.
I know. So I was thinking maybe that was one for us, and we've got 2,000 new friends.
Yeah. So Nicole, we attached to the hotel is the quarry. The quarry is what built the hotel. So if you can imagine a football field, 30-foot limestone cliff walls around in a box. The moment we saw that, Nicole's little electronic dance music.
But we also found a local promoter.
Yes.
So Rez, and he's a great DJ from this area and from Adelaide.
And he does a lot of
So it wasn't a case of just bringing everything in, you were able to do it local.
No, we worked sort of with Andrew closely, and we thought, let's try this. And then the first year was like, over 1,000, then it went up to 1,500, and then it just keeps growing each year. And it's...
I'm sure for them and for the ravers, in a warehouse, you're properly in nature in this stunning backdrop, and there's a ready supply of craft beer if anyone's not drinking water.
No, true, But we sort of go, and we don't scrimp on the production. Like it's the stage is pretty amazing, visual screens right along the top of the quarry. We put fireworks. We have 25 DJs, all from either Adelaide or Melbourne or Sydney that fly in for it. And it's been pretty amazing. So we're sort of
stages. So
and do people travel in for the the attendees?
Definitely, all over. So we get a lot of. Well, we get both South Australia with the database. Quite a few from Sydney and Melbourne, and now we're getting sort of requests from some DJs intrastate that have sort of said, can we come and play too? So we're like, why not? Let's do it. And the police love it too. It's quite amazing that. It's somewhere for the kids to all come, enjoy themselves. They're really well behaved because they know don't stuff up, because this is only one of a few venues in the region. So they've been amazing. We haven't had a single issue in the 3 years.
Because it's an environment where they're kind of trapped. They all need to organise how to get home. So at 11 when it finishes, by 11:30, there's no one here. It's amazing.
And it's that sort of part of what you think the appeal has become is doing those major events. People come in and sort of see the place and tell people about it. Like, do you feel you have to do that for
totally?
It to,
very much
a direction we wanted to go. I mean, we've done the food. People come here to eat and drink, but I think because there's not a lot to do in the Riverland for the younger generation and even middle-aged, I guess.
Is that us?
Yeah.
Clinging on to middle age.
It created another event for them. So we are really focused on doing more of these.
We are. We've got the food and the drinks with the hotels now set. We're really well known for that. We get people sort of travelling, caravanners. We've got that offering sort of pretty much set.
Yeah.
And we always sort of, want to create that. But having that sort of, flow on effect into events is something that definitely, for a tourism business, you've got to be thinking on your toes constantly.
Yeah.
And we've just found that that's an avenue that we've got so many wild and wonderful events planned for the next 12 to 24 months. I come up with an event, or Nicole will come up with an idea in the middle of the night, and we sort of say to each other, and then after the initial, are you crazy? Then we think about it and go,
the next 3 steps are planned out already.
Good idea. Yeah, the poster's already been designed. So it's we're looking forward to it the next 12 to 24 months of what we've got planned.
Yeah. Oh, and it's interesting, you talk about sort of the free camping and like come and have a meal. It's a pretty common thing you find if you travel in Australia. A lot of pubs going, we've got some space out the back. But it's normally like just a pretty standard pub in a pretty small town.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've just got a paddock out the back.
Yes.
Whereas here you're camping on the river.
Absolutely.
And you're coming into something like this and you might find drag queen bingo.
Bingo on, yeah. And we get
true.
We get a lot of campers like that. So directly behind the pub, obviously we've got a big levee bank that goes right around the pub. After the 56 floods and the whole pub went under, in 74 they built a levee bank around the pub to keep it safe.
Well, but wasn't that one of your first TV appearances was when you got flooded not long after we were last
It was. And I don't know if you knew about our one of my best mates that I've now become friends with, but Prince William gave us a video call
Yes.
and FaceTimed me,
Yeah,
and we had a lovely chat for about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And he was concerned about the pub and concerned, God bless him. But so
Yes.
that made international media all around the world.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come and asking about that. But we've got directly behind the pub where you can pull up if it's just for a night.
Yeah.
And you want to stay there, or if you're feeling a little bit adventurous or want to stay a few days, we say go through our gate 400 metres down the road and you're on the Murray River, and it's gorgeous. It takes probably 5 minutes to walk up, hour and a half to walk home, which is a common theme that we seem to
go
find.
through and pull people out
out of the reeds.
and just make
So it's amazing, and we're getting all. I mean, as yourself know, we travel. The age now is it's not just the grey nomads. We're getting a lot of families with kids and they're coming and staying for a few days. And like you said, there's quite often a few of them will park out the back, walk over the bank into the beer garden and find 500 people watching Drag Queen Bingo. And they go, wow, this is something I didn't expect in regional South Australia.
And have you been sort of accepted by the wider sort of, hospo, I guess, community here as well? Or are people like, those guys are coming?
No,
stolen our thunder.
We work really closely with them all. I think that's
on purpose as well.
Yeah.
We go and visit.
Are you almost like the
theirs.
first place you'll hit when you're coming in from the sort of
true.
west of the Riverland anyway? Yeah.
Very, very true. So as they're coming from South Australia or anywhere like that, we like to say where everyone's either first point of call or their last point of call.
Yeah.
So we made it a conscious effort to, when they pulled up, we'd actually write them an itinerary.
Yeah.
And I'd say, right, you've got kids. Here's where you want to go for a couple of breakfasts, dinners, lunches. Here's the pubs, the distilleries, the wineries.
Yeah.
So we were like the unofficial information centre.
Yeah.
And it's just so different from coming from Sydney.
Yeah.
You're working really closely with all of these places. Because if you think someone's coming up here to spend 7 days and visit just your pub, you're kidding. As much as you'd love it, but they want to go off with the kids. They want to go to the play area and then go and have lunch here. Right, you love your coffee. Go to Arostos. He roasts his own coffee beans. Go to the brewery for lunch. Go to the distillery. Go visit this winery.
Yeah.
So we've sort of made a point of being the unofficial information centre.
Yeah, well, my kids are gutted we weren't here long enough this trip to do Monash Adventure Park again.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I remember there was a strange little shop across the road. We got the best marmalade I've had in a long time.
Yeah, the
There you
chocolate
go.
shop.
Yeah. I seem to remember all the food-related stores. We turned off to come here earlier today, and I'm like, we bought one of those spaghetti squash over there.
Yes.
I went to pull in, and it was just an abandoned
shed.
pile
Pile of dirt. They've got the new shed there that they're building.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to...
You know what I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah, so it's amazing. We work really closely with them all. Everyone's been fantastic. I suppose another thing is that these venues, whether it's the owner of the licensee or the person serving you, is often also the netball coach or the soccer coach, it's your daughter's school teacher. So without even knowing it, you're sort of working closely with these people, or you've got connections with them all right across the board.
That's
so
true.
that sort of worked really well.
Yeah. That's great. And I guess before we take a break, and I guess go on to the backstory and the wider story of Brad and Nicole, everything else you've done around the booze industry and other industries. It's not just been, I guess, foot traffic through the door that's proving your success. You've had won like a ridiculous number of accolades over the years. Is that right as well?
Yeah, we've been
mostly
really
tourism related or hospo as
yeah,
well.
really
or?
lucky. Just sort of, I suppose, a bit of recognition for what you're doing. So quite a few awards with best destination pub and best craft beer, South Australia. Sort of what if travel awards and quite a few. So they're always nice to get and receive. It makes you think, well, maybe I did the right thing in pulling the kids and family out of Sydney.
How did the kids go about that suddenly? Unplanned to go, your mates that you've known for the first few years of your life, they're going to be over there, and we're now depositing you into this. How did that go?
I think it was fine for Jax, the little one, little boy, because he was too little when he left.
Yeah.
So he's settled here. This is home for him.
Yeah.
Whereas Indy, who's older and 15 now, it was a little bit harder for her. Yeah. But now that she's got her group of friends and her dance friends and her netball friends, she's settled.
You take Jack back to Sydney and he'd be like,
he does.
This is awful, horrible.
Yeah, my daughter sort of goes, Westfield, wow. Look at the shops. But I think also, if you think about it, it was the best time. I think if we hadn't tried to do it now, it wouldn't have worked. But we did it in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
So all of their friends in Sydney were in, 2-bedroom units. And when we were FaceTiming, they were in a little white room with a white wall where we're sitting on a luxury houseboat, a Woolshed brewery, riding horses or motorbikes, swimming in the river. Yeah. So it was, the kids were, we still look at photos now. Roller skating on the deck at Woolshed, drinking, we're hard lemonades and we're drinking beer and loving it. Yeah. So it was just a really easy time to transition them into. That was the best time to do it, really. Yeah. And we get back to Sydney every now and again and just go, Nicole still likes it. Like, again, Westfield. Shopping. But I just the traffic, just the traffic's what got us in the end.
So the op shops and Foodland isn't doing it for you around Riverland?
No. We go to Adelaide quite a lot. Yeah, the shopping. That's probably the number one. Coming from an outsider looking in at my wife and my daughter, I think if I had to say anything that they really, truly missed, shopping. So when we do go to Adelaide, we usually have to take a box trailer with us because of the amount of shopping that they've done.
Is this to assuage your guilt at
having
done what you've done?
Yeah, Dad, can I have another pair of shoes? Sure, honey. No dramas.
Nice. Excellent. Well, we'll take a short break there and then we'll come back and chat about all the other stuff outside the Overland Corner Hotel.
Awesome.
G'day guys, it's Craig here again from the Crafty Pint, and I'm back with Aaron Gore from Beer 30 by the Fifth Ingredient. These guys run one of the best brewery management software systems in the world. They work with breweries all over the globe, and we're here to share some insights that are going to help you hopefully brew better beer, save money, do it more efficiently, all the good things. Aaron, thank you for joining me yet again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Craig. Happy to be on.
Mate, it's fantastic. You've got all this data at your fingertips. Today, I want to tap into some of that data. I want to think about how we can use that to better plan a brewery's purchasing requirements. So purchasing, procurement, whatever you want to call it. Let's dig into it. Mate, I'd love to set the scene, first of all, talking about purchasing and procurement. What does that mean for a brewery? What are they buying in? And how are most breweries kind of doing that today?
Well, I mean, they're buying in all sorts of things. So, beer doesn't appear out of the ether. Obviously, you got grain, you got hops, you have all your sort of flavorings, adjuncts, chemicals, merchandise. It's a very complicated operation. There's a lot that goes into it. But for the average brewery, we actually have a very technical term for what the average brewery is doing with it when it comes to raw materials. They're guessing. And that's really what it comes down to. For a lot of breweries, they're really figuring out what they're going to brew, weeks, maybe even days before they actually brew it. If you've ever been in the average brew house, they got the big whiteboard. I'm reasonably certain that prehistoric man, when they first discovered beer, discovered the whiteboard first and used that initially. But that really is about as far out as they're looking. And that's a shame, because that really is such a huge impact on the business, just being able to make sure that not only are you buying the right stuff, but you're buying it at the right times and the right quantities to make sure that you're not flipping yourself upside down right out of the gate.
Yeah, and at the right price as well, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, that system, so that guesswork, planning on the fly, I guess, what are the risks associated with that? Like, how can that harm your business in a way?
Well, it's no secret to anybody who's been in the beer industry that our cash cycle is frankly upside down right from the get go. You're laying
Mm.
out a lot of money for raw materials before you've ever put anything in the tank. You have the fermentation time, let's say 21 days to get that back. And then you either got to put it out in the market yourself across the bar, in local self distribution, or you have to sell it to a wholesaler who's probably on 30 or 45-day terms themselves. That means that anything that you can do to keep the amount of raw materials you have to buy as low as possible, that's really reducing your risk. Because the moment that you're actually outlaying for any sort of inputs, you're making a bet, and
Mm.
that bet is that you're going to be able to get a return on that investment, or at the very least break even before that beer codes out. And you're actually making a bigger bet on top of that, that this is the best possible place to put that money, best possible place to park that cash. And in an industry that's already pretty cash starved, an industry that already needs to make as much as they can just to keep the lights on and be able to create more beer, the thing that we all love, anything that you can do to be as efficient as possible also helps you really do right by your people and do right by your business and get back to the things that really made you passionate about it in the first place.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. Cash flow is the number one thing here. It's such a long tail of from manufacture to sales to then recouping that income. So say a brewery gets on board with Beer 30, they've implemented this system across the board. You can use that system to track all your inputs, outputs, and so on. How can data play a role here? Like, what can Beer 30 do to really tighten up that whole process?
Absolutely. So there's a few things that Beer 30 or whatever brewery management software you happen to be using can really do to help your business. The first is just going to be giving you your actual COGS. That's your cost of goods sold. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the silent killer of breweries, and something that I've seen time and time again is if breweries aren't controlling their costs, you might actually be losing money on the beer that goes out the door without even realizing it. It's no secret right now, and it's pretty obvious from the sound of my voice that I'm an American. There's a little bit going on in world trade right now. We do own all the onus of it, but that really has made it so that raw material inputs, especially grain, aluminum, hops coming from the States, have been all over the place, up, down, left, right, and sideways. So being able to really have a good insight into not only what you've paid historically, but what every purchase that you've made of those raw materials cost you, and how that's changed over time, how that's varying, how that's trending. That is your first step towards knowing when and how you need to make a change, whether it's in suppliers or recipe formulation, or even just emphasizing certain beers that might not be so dependent on things that might have a bigger or more variable or more risky, is another way of looking at it, cost component. So that's step one. Step two is really being able to have an understanding of all of your inventory that you have, so that you understand you don't have a couple of 11-pound bags of hops chucked in the back of a freezer in the lab that you completely forgot about. The more you're able to actually track your inventory, that lets you keep your actual inventory counts low, and it keeps your inventory risk low and makes it so you have less of a cash flow, less of an inventory flow, just to make sure that you always have what you need when it does come time to brew. And then lastly, just having a real understanding of what all that builds into when it comes to your finished goods. Beer has a lot of complex inputs, and that can change over time, that can change lot to lot, that can change batch to batch. The more you're able to compare those changes over time, the more you're able to understand the difference between a beer that's at least making you money and one that might be actually costing you money, even if your customers are loving every pint of it. And that's the difference between a brewery that's thriving in the current climate and, well, we have a term for the other one as well, and that's unfortunately a former brewery.
Yeah, and I guess there's also a forecasting element there as well, Aaron, where particularly with hop suppliers and contracting ahead, I guess using that system, you can really map out your production schedules for the year ahead and figure out how much of each item do I need to order and when do I need to order it to get those best prices.
That's absolutely something that we're able to facilitate as well. We actually have two different systems for that. So we actually have a demand planning tool, which will take your sales forecast and your production forecast, which you should be doing as far out as you have reasonable knowledge. I actually call it the bullseye method, where you start with what you know, and it might be broad, it might be fuzzy, but you still want to get that down. And then as things get a little more sure, you start narrowing in that focus until you're actually ready to commit it to whatever scheduling tool or to that whiteboard as it may be. That allows you to understand when you're going to be brewing. That allows you to understand on the sales forecasting side how much you need to brew. We also have a material resource planning tool, an MRP tool, that takes that information and then takes a look at all of your raw materials and says, hey, if we have to brew this amount to make sure that we always have inventory in stock for this level of sales order that we're expecting and forecasting, when are we going to need to order based on the lead times, based on the current inventory for everything that we have in our inventory? And that's key, because you really do want to keep your days on hand of finished goods inventory as low as possible, and you want to keep your raw materials inventory as low as possible. That's the only way to make sure that you don't have to sit on an arbitrarily large amount of just petty cash and just backup money in case things don't happen to go the way you hope they do.
I love it. Well, there you go, guys. Turn your purchasing and procurement from a headache into an asset for your business. Talk to the team at Beer 30. Aaron, what's the best way that people can get in touch?
Best way to reach out is to hit me up personally at aaron.gore. That's aaron.gore at thefifthingredient.com, or if you want something simpler, you can hit us up at pints at thefifthingredient.com. Check us out online as well. Our website has all the information you need, including a live chat function if you ever do need to get in touch with somebody and just have a few questions before you go ahead and commit to a full demo. We're happy to answer them. We're happy to work for you and with you. And thank you, Craig, for having us on.
No worries, Aaron, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for those insights, and we'll be back with more in future episodes. Cheers, Aaron.
Cheers, man.
Okay, we're sat here in the Overland Court Hotel. It's kind of heading back in time in a sort of hospo sense, but heading back in time in a Brad and Nicole sense. How did you guys first meet?
We met in a nightclub in Manly, in New South
2000?
Wales.
Year 2000?
The Ivanhoe.
The Ivanhoe Hotel, 24 hour.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very classy establishment. I remember.
24-hour establishment.
They are 24-hour establishment. I went down there with a few mates and
down there with a few
girls, and we got talking that night. We went back to Nicole's place that she was renting, obviously as a young person, which happened to also be a 4-story mansion that she was sharing with 3 or 4 flight attendants from Qantas.
Yeah.
So Nicole actually had to go away very early the next morning for a work trip to, I believe, New Zealand.
It was New Zealand, yeah.
I mean, you were a flight attendant, or you were working?
I was working in skincare.
Yeah. So Nicole said, we were sort of just sitting on the couch with all the friends and we're all drinking, and she said, I've got to go. And then all of a sudden, over the course of the next 5 or 6 hours, taxis started pulling up and flight attendants started getting out from their flights. And I was like, what? This is a house full of flight attendants, and they're all bringing booze off the plane.
And just constantly sort of rotating in and out all day.
Yeah, so Nicole came back after, I think, 7 days from her trip to New Zealand, a work trip. And
you were still there?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Found me there. She walked through the house and went, froze, and what are you doing? I went, why would I leave? It's a 4-story mansion on the beach.
Yeah.
I can surf all day, drink all night, and the rest is history.
And what were you doing? You weren't in craft beer at the time. That's what.
I'm trying to think what it was.
You were managing.
I was a bar. Yeah, it was a nightclub bar.
So seriously, you were in hospo?
I was in hospo, but that side of it. Yeah. So that's how it all started, and the rest is history.
Did any of the other flight attendants at any point say, "Excuse me, who are you?"
Well, they'd all get out of the taxi, and they'd usually have a 1.25 of vodka, so that they'd take duty free. And they'd all come in, and I'd explain. I'd met Nicole, and sure enough, we'd have a drink, and then the party would start again. So it was just young and having fun. It was great, amazing place. But
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. And when did this sort of craft beer side of things enter your lives then?
Yeah, so I actually was looking at that stage. We were thinking about whether we set up a bar ourselves. I knew I wanted to do something in the craft beer industry.
You were doing wine as well.
Yeah, I was. I was working with
sales.
Yeah, for Tempest too. So Brian and
Yeah.
Faye McGuigan and the
Yeah.
McGuigan wine brand and Lisa McGuigan. And I was doing sales and a bit of marketing for those guys and sort of some bar work and really in that industry and looking at whether or not we set up our own bar or how we do it. And then I don't know how the contact started, but Dave and Karen from Red Hill,
Hill.
Brewery,
Yeah.
they contacted me and said, listen, we've got your details through a friend. We know you know a lot of bars and clubs and bottle shops and nightclubs and all that in Sydney. Would you possibly look at maybe helping us launch down there in Sydney? And I thought, well, I'm selling the wine to all of these bottle shops. I said, listen, I'm getting paid by these guys, so maybe I look at doing it more on a commission basis. And we started from there. And then I do remember Karen and David sort of had obviously contacted a few other of their counterparts in the beer industry. So I think within a week, I'd been contacted by John at Nail.
Just happened, didn't it? Yeah.
Brendan Barris from Ferrell.
So when are we talking? Sort of mid-late, sort of noughties kind of thing?
It would have been, sort of 2009.
Maybe.
Yeah, so about the time that 2 or 3 year period where everything started happening,
Yeah.
So I sort of, I still remember this day.
So you hadn't been involved in distro or anything like that?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
You were just known as someone who knew a lot
An
of
alcoholic.
pubs and bars.
Yeah, so basically, a professional alcoholic.
Yeah.
But it was, I still remember John flew in and a few others flew in, and I sort of just kept picking up breweries over the course of, we're talking within 2 months. And
they were all talking to each other.
Going, right, you've got the contact. So all of a sudden I had 40 to 50 breweries, on Bridge Road and Ferrell. We had everyone. I was sort of distributing everyone all throughout New South Wales and then into Queensland, bit into Tasmania. I had Cavalier, Two Birds. So we sort of then Prickly Moses. So we sort of, that's how it organically happened. I sort of fell into it.
Was this when you were still doing sports marketing as well? Because it was a fun.
No, that was after. That was before that. Yeah, that was. That's how that formulated was a funny story. I'll get to that. But then I sort of teamed up with, I suppose, Heath from Cavalier at the time and Danielle from Two Birds. There was Steve from Ferrell and who can forget Luke Scott from Prickly Moses.
So all the very level-headed, sensible characters.
Yeah, well, yes. So we used to call it our family trip. So back then, it seemed like every single weekend there was a beer festival. That was the start of it. So we'd call our family trips and we'd all go on a family trip and we'd go to a region and do a big beer festival. Very level-headed bunch, that crew. And that sort of tour, it was like a travelling circus that went right around Australia.
What, did you have the kids at this stage?
No.
Okay, I was about to say. You weren't there.
Not at the start.
In 2009.
So that sort of snowballed from there, and then I suppose I like to say the new wave then came through, and we had Hop Nation and sort of some of the newer guys that were starting out, and it just grew and grew and grew, which was pretty amazing. The lifestyle, getting to travel, really sort of being consumed by the industry, and it was at its peak. It sort of when it exploded. It was pretty amazing to see where it came from to where it was going.
But I don't think you looked at it as work. You
No.
loved it. It was doing what he loved.
Yes.
And were you still working?
I was still working. Yeah.
So you were travelling.
I was
was your job
travelling
as well.
Yeah.
It was with a lot of travel.
Yeah.
We did a lot of travel together, and that's where I think it started. Even with the kids, I'd go away for a business trip. Nicole would come because she could tie her business. She was running a big international skincare company, but wherever I'd go, she had work that she could go and do. Vice versa. Nicole had to fly somewhere around Australia or even internationally, and she'd have to go to Fiji. I go, right, well, I'm coming and I'll start selling beer into Fiji.
ATO's going, surely these guys have to pay for something at some point.
It was a bit like that. So then the kids came along and we just tacked them on. So it was like that's how it came about, the caravan. It was just that we've always travelled with the kids. The craft beer sort of overtook everything. I was doing sports advertising and promotion before that. I was bitten by a spider.
That wasn't much after we met.
Yeah,
2001. I wanted to
2001.
get him out of the bar, managing the nightclub because he was coming home so late. And so
trying to be responsible.
And you're working pretty much 9 to 5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I wrote him up a resume, didn't tell him, and I applied for the job for him. Yeah.
So they
while he was in hospital.
Yeah, well, pretty much.
pretty
Yeah,
much,
they
yeah.
called me up and said, we handle the scrolling digital signage you see around the pitches of pretty much every sport in the world.
Yeah.
And this English company that owned the actual machines, and then the Australian company that had sourced those machines, and they were trying to get it into the AFL and the cricket, soccer, everything, football, rugby league. So they asked me to come down for an interview, but I thought it was to win a signed jersey. So I turned up in thongs, board shorts, and a t-shirt, and I walked into this beautiful office overlooking the harbour.
Yeah.
And
Where's my signed jersey?
Yeah, and the
Pretty much,
the gentleman was there, and he was, in his very expensive suit, and we had a bit of a chat in his office, and a bit longer chat, and then as you do, he said, "Do you want to go down the road? We'll go to the bar." I said, "Yeah." So we went down the pub and had a few beers.
Yeah.
And then we came back to the office, and he sort of, he said, "Listen, you're great at what you do. You can talk underwater, but what would make you think that you're perfect for this job?" And I said, "What job?" And he went,
"Oh, so
I still know it.
So many
Oh,
hours
God,
in.
no. We were half shot. We'd had, we'd been down the pub, drink a beer, and he's pulled out my resume. And I said, "That's what?" And I said, "I didn't send him a resume." And he said, "Well, who did?" And then I looked at the number on the top, and I realised it was Nicole's work number. And I said, "My wife sent you this." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "How much are you paying?" And he told me. I went, "That's exactly bloody why." So to his credit, he said, "Start Monday."
Nice.
So I walked in. I didn't have a suit. I don't think I even owned a collared shirt.
Yeah.
And then we went about securing the rights for the scrolling signage at all the sports in Australia. And so that's how that stemmed, and then into the craft beer industry.
So you got him out of booze.
I did.
And
then he went
last.
straight back in. Yeah.
But it's been a wild old ride.
Yeah.
And in terms of sort of, I guess we touched upon it with the family trips.
Yep.
I wouldn't say it was, obviously it was only a staging post in the Flowers story within beer, but there was that. What year was it? Was it the last Sydney Craft Beer Week or whatever?
Before,
and there was a hashtag fucking flowers.
Yeah, hashtag fucking flowers.
So what was that all about? And I guess how had we got to the point where there was enough reason for a flowers-related hashtag at a beer festival?
Well, it's funny, as Nicole says, I didn't really look at it as a career or as a job. It was more my passion. So I had craft brewers from all over Australia coming in for their yearly trip to Sydney that would want to catch up and talk about sales and go through all the. So I'd usually.
Can I interject?
Yeah, sure.
The hashtag is because when Brad has had enough, he just goes. He'll leave.
Oh, you're a ghoster.
He's a
I
ghoster.
don't ghost. I just leave.
Okay.
I don't even try and hide. I just walk out.
So they'll be halfway through their night, and one of them, like Luke and that, will be going, "Where's Brad?"
Gone.
He's gone. So
Okay.
that's
So it's not that he's got them into trouble. It's more that he's left them.
I've just left him in trouble.
But I think it's fair to say at the same time, though, that certainly within the New South Wales scene, like what you were doing in terms of representing those breweries and having that enthusiasm and putting those events on really helped build the craft beer scene in Sydney. Like, which I think is still a struggle venue-wise these days, like 10, 15 years on. But, you'd have been going into bars and venues and going, "Hey, you need to be putting these beers on." Like, it wasn't.
Absolutely.
You weren't just trying to sell the beer in.
No,
you were part of that person.
You had
one
to,
of those key
sell
figures
it.
really building it. Yeah,
You had to sell it. Like, I still remember the first event that Feral had sort of done outside of WA, and I had to pretty much lie, beg, borrow, and steal to Brendan about getting the beer over. He was flying I think he was flying overseas, and he'd rung me and he said, "Listen, I've planned, if you want to organise and order a little bit of beer while I'm away, just call Bailey in the office and we'll sort it out and we'll send over." I think he thought maybe 10 to 15 cartons.
Yeah.
I planned and I ordered pallets and pallets and pallets of kegs, and they shipped it over, cold freighted it, and he rung me from overseas and went, I meant a few cartons of beer, mate. He was sort of so he flew back, but it was about putting these events on and going, "Listen, you've got a world-class brewery like Feral.
Yeah.
We've got 20 taps.
Yeah.
Unheard
Let's
of.
just do it.
Unheard of anywhere in Australia, let alone in New South Wales." And then we'd have sort of 400 to 500 people turn up to a venue to go, "This is a one-off." So it was about sort of creating that. This is the start, and
exciting.
it was really exciting. Yeah. So, and it got to mask, you got to drink at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's brilliant.
And I suppose, jumping ahead a bit from there, I mean, lots of things happen in between times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, COVID made change in a certain way in terms of income for a lot of breweries was kind of a good thing, but then maybe it's had sort of a
That's right.
less than positive sort of impact afterwards.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we've had the cost of living crisis the last few years, so things have very much changed. I mean, how do you feel like you look back, having a central figure to such an exciting period?
Yep.
Looking ahead, do you think there's anything like that again, or having been you're a veteran?
Yeah, yeah. No, listen, it was definitely exciting. There's a lot of challenges now for the industry. You can see it, but it's all swings and roundabouts with everything. So I think you'll see the ones that sort of really rise to the forefront are the ones that have got the plans in place. They've got the good beer to start with, like we were discussing earlier. So you've got to start with a good base, which is great beer. If you don't have great beer, all the marketing in the world's not going to do anything. So if you've got great beer to start with, you're already one step ahead of the curve. And then you look at a good solid marketing plan. There's always going to be $1 to spend on beer. Like we found it here. You've got an outback country pub in the middle of nowhere and you're trying to sell a weird soured, like some of the beers we've got that we sell, and Nicole sort of goes...
And these are all still the brands that you're representing, still distributing.
Yeah, we still buy beers from them. But people will always trial beers. So you've got to have a good base mark and then you can sort of step upwards. But I think the industry is going through some challenges. I think you'll see the evolution of things like Sydney Craft Beer Week. Really excited with what Pete from Sweeney's is doing. He's going to take it to another forefront of where it needs to go. And then you'll get breweries jumping on board and, the excitement with what DJ's obviously doing with Mountain Culture and sort of, amalgamating with other breweries. But, it's pretty exciting times. I look at it from afar now.
Have you managed to maintain contact with,
I still get in contact with a lot of them. We still chat. Obviously, the boys at Big Shed too, obviously being closer. But it's quite funny. We were only over in Perth, I think 2 weeks ago. And I sort of wanted to catch up with them all, but I thought, no, it's a family trip. I better not because I might not make it home. So I've promised that I'll go over and see John and, really exciting with what John's doing with Feral and acquiring that again. I think that's super exciting for the industry. It's going to be really interesting and fun times ahead. Challenges, but still fun.
Well, and I guess, if we were to try and offer some sort of, positive thing to hang on for the beer industry, like you've made this work here with craft beer. Like, what sort of carrots can you offer to other regional venue operators to go, this is a positive thing you should do? Like how can craft beer be part of like a positive offering?
Listen, travel and tourism is a big thing, and that's all stemmed from COVID. I think a lot of people that used to go, I suppose we'll go on our annual trip, we'll go to Bali or Thailand. A lot of them are saying we'll stay local and we'll travel Australia. So as you've got more people from the capital cities and that travelling regionally and remotely around Australia, they're not as, I suppose, blindsided by the offerings that you might have. So, dip your toe in the water. You don't have to go, all balls to the wall like we did, but that was because I know the industry backwards.
But I guess it can become a talking point or a point of difference. Like, if there's enough people out there who do appreciate something nicer, like my mate who we're meeting in a few days' time, Cooper P, he's like, thank God, for one of the bigger brands that he can get, because I've not been able to find any craft beer. And he can't be the only person travelling through the NT looking for craft beer. So like the Prairie Hotel, Parachilna Brew Project,
they've got their own.
People will go there because like they would do here, going, I just want to go to...
People get excited when they see the choice you've got here.
They do.
I can only imagine all the travellers everywhere, if there was a little bit of choice other than just the standard...
And you don't have to go these crazy sours. You can simply go to your local craft brewery or these regional ones.
And get a Woolshed hazy
pale.
Absolutely.
But a lot of these breweries too. I mean, we all know about BOB products and branded own and sort of doing that. But why not go and get a lager or a pale ale or something similar and work in unison with these guys and put your own tap on and just have it as, like the Prairie have done. But you've got a country regional hotel and it's their own beer. Yes, they've teamed up in collaboration with a brewery, but people would love to experience that. And I think if you explain to people now, and it's like done a full reverse. I now am explaining to older clientele about the fact that there's no Australian breweries large scale that is 100% Australian owned, except Cooper's.
Yeah.
And we explain this, and I would say this 100 times a day.
They're
They're
shocked.
shocked.
They have no idea.
So a guy that's been drinking VB, Tooheys, Great Northern, Iron Jack, all of these for, they have no idea. They think it's 100% Australian owned. So it's explaining that to them, and straight away you've won them over.
And I suppose if you're thinking with your tourism traveller's hat on, when you go somewhere, you want to learn about the local history. You want to experience the local stuff. If you come through the Riverland, you want to eat some local mandies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It almost seems a no-brainer to go, well, who's my local brewery, or who's somewhere nearby? Let's work with them and then tell their story and become part of it. Yeah.
Definitely. And we explain to the guys, because you do, a lot of the old clientele think of craft beer and they think of the weird and wonderful beers that have been created, which gets a lot of the publicity. But I explained to them, I said, they're very well known for their, Bat's Pubes IPA or their Squid Ink Mandarin Sour.
Don't give too many ideas.
And they go, what? You go, Squid Ink Mandarin IPA. Oh, wow. But I go, listen, whatever you drink, go into your local craft brewery or as you're travelling around Australia and say, I drink VB or I drink Tooheys or I drink Great Northern, and tell them that you want an easy, and they'll give you a lager, they'll give you a summer ale, they'll give you something that you can sort of try and taste. And we get a lot of them here. I say, here's the taps.
No one's here to not like you and want to piss you off. No small brewers there going, I hate normal people.
I hate,
and I'm making this beer
to piss you off,
to make them angry.
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite amazing. They'll go, I don't like this hoppy bullshit, and you go, it's not hoppy. Try this, and they try they try Woolshed's lager, and they think, oh wow.
I thought you meant, that's not hoppy. Try this.
Triple A. Yeah. So it's it's a learning curve still for me after 20 plus years in the industry. I find it's really exciting stepping back and now teaching the older, and as much as you're teaching the older clientele, it's about those 18-year-olds coming through now, especially in regional New South Wales, South Australia, Queensland. These are the guys that are sort of being targeted heavily by the likes of Great Northern and sort of so forth. So we find it a two-edged sword. We're sort of trying to educate the young ones whilst we're trying to educate the older clientele.
Yeah, no, great. Well, having sort of brought it back to the Overland Corner Hotel, to wrap things up, what does the future look like now that you are, dyed in the wool Riverland locals over 5 years? What's next for the Overland?
Well, you don't really get called local here until it's about 50 years.
So we're still blow-ins.
No, we're still blow-ins. But yes,
it's still going to be the same, but more.
Yeah. I like that.
What's the more? Just more dance parties.
More wild raves in the bush.
Some cages hanging off the...
Well, she was looking at professional dancers. Listen, the event side, I'd love to really push. Like I said, we've got this wine, beer and spirit festival. I really want to increase that to be I want to do a craft beer one in the bush, really get all the brewers in.
So who'd you get beer-wise for that? So Woolshed will be...
Woolshed will be involved in What's a Cowie, which is they're good mates of ours, and so
they're down one of the peninsulas, aren't they? Are they down...
Yeah, down the peninsula. And then talking with Jason at Big Shed and all that, just with timing, hopefully. But, try to increase that. But then, just giving people more and more events, doing bigger style events. This Sounds in the Quarry is 2 stages. We're hoping to increase that next year to 3 stages. And then looking at taking it down even, as Nicole looks at me going, what? Increasing it down into the river even. So sort of, have it as a bit of a Burning Man and go, right, we're going to do build a bit like what Willie Smith did with their building that huge, Burning Man effigy, and plenty of ideas.
You want 2 nights and camping. You? That's what he's kind of heading towards. A bit more.
There's nothing like it. And we do... And we'll probably do a music style event for families too. That's our big one. So we've got the electronic dance music one, which is all ages. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, from 18 to, we had some 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds here. Yeah. We'll do a rock one, which is going to be alternative rock, country and punk. That's in Australia Day. But I'd love to do a family-friendly one where everyone can bring caravans, a bit like Monday, but on a smaller scale.
That'd be great. There was one outside Melbourne a few years ago called Lost Lands that did it, Werribee Mansion in the grounds there, and it was designed. It was based on, I can never remember the name, based on the family-friendly version of Brandon Block's festival back in the UK.
Wow.
I can remember the name of it now, even though my sister goes every year. And it was great. Like, the music might have been a little bit vanilla for my taste, but you could take the kids down to have the festival experience. The main stage is finished at 9:30, 10 or whatever.
Yep. Perfect.
There was loads of circus stuff on, and it was great because you can still go down and hang out with your mates and have the kids there. Not to run away from the family to go and party or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, but they stopped after 2 or 3 years, whether it was, it wasn't financially worth it for them, in Melbourne, Greater Cost or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely an audience for that. As people who've grown up through that festival era, the last 30, 40 years globally, get a bit older, it's like, can we still go without the kids? You don't want to take your kids to certain other festivals.
So, yes, correct. Yeah.
So anyway, all I'm saying in short is we'll be back.
Do it. Yeah, definitely. And our kids are now at the age, our daughter's 15, going on 16. But, we just recently sort of had them looked after by Nanny and Pa, and we took off down to Adelaide to watch Fatboy Slim at one of the wineries. Yeah. But my daughter was like, come on, sure. Come on.
Yeah.
And you're like, see, there's got to be something there. Like you said, you still want to go with the kids, you want to have a drink, still have a party with your mates, but you've got your kids in tow. So that's probably the big focus, I reckon, putting on something like that.
Well, you're certainly not lacking for ideas. That goes without saying. No, that's all so good to have a chat with you guys. Thank you for, like I said, apologies again for coming a day when you're not open.
No, don't be silly,
great
mate.
to chat. We could chat for hours and hours. Maybe we'll do like a part 2 in a few years' time once you've got all the other festivals going.
Well, you mentioned that you wanted to catch up and do part 2 at Sydney Beer Week. I said just you and I, wasn't it? Yeah. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
A week-long interview without cameras or microphones.
Yes, or GPS trackers. Yeah. So, always a pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having us.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Are you a supplier to the craft beer industry? Are you looking for more customers? Chat to the team at The Crafty Pint today. Across our website, email newsletters, and weekly podcast, we reach more industry decision makers than any other media platform. Whatever your objectives, we can help you create engaging advertising campaigns, podcast segments, or ad reads that cut through. Chat to Craig, that's me, today. Hit me up at craig@craftypint.com.
The Crafty Pint podcast is produced and edited by Matt Hoffman. You can get all your beer-related news and reviews on the Crafty Pint website, craftypint.com, and can stay up to date on future podcast episodes via our socials.
We wouldn't be able to produce the podcast or the website, events or festivals we run without the support of the beer industry, whether that's suppliers, bars, breweries or bottle shops. If you'd like to support the show or partner with the Crafty Pint in other ways, please reach out to Craig via the details in the show notes.
And if you're a beer lover who'd like to support what we do, you can join our exclusive club for beer lovers, the Crafty Cabal. Visit craftykabal.com for more.
And until next time, drink good beer.